Hello and welcome to the 150th episode of Trash to Track, and in this episode we're going to be looking at this Hornby R693 high-speed train set. Now, I've been after one of these for ages, and as luck would have it, I was in the model shop the other day as this one was traded in, so I bought it straight away. Now, the reason I've been after one of these is this was the very first train set I ever got that was my own train. My nan and granddad bought it for me. It would have been Christmas 1990 or 1991, and I absolutely loved it. And I've been after one for such a long time, I'm so pleased I've got one. Now here's a throwback for you. Here's a picture of me and my brother with my original HST. That's me on the left rocking those doody pyjamas. And I wish I had that amount of hair now. But yeah, that's me and my brother Lee playing on the tabletop with a HST R693 set. Now you know it's R693 because it's in the green box. The rest of them were different, and the power cars as well are incorrect, as they've got the intercity beige on the front of the power cars instead of the more normal white. So it came with its original controller, which I have tested and is not working correctly. It is working, but the power output is low, so I'll use that just to fill the box. There's a power clip that I've replaced. And I'm going to replace the steel track with nickel silver track. So I'll start rebuilding the track sections of the train set, as the track was actually missing when the chap traded this in. But he said it had been in a loft for years, so we're going to have a look at it. And I really am overjoyed to have one of these sets again. I do have both my original power cars. I do have those with me, and I'll show you those shortly. But I'm just rebuilding this train set box. There's two long straights and two short straights, and these first radius curves are virtually brand new. These came out of an old Toy Story train set that Lucy used to have, but we never used the track, so I've used it for this. Now, going into the Pat Hammond Hornby Railways Bible, into the train set section, I'm going to look for this set, and I find it here on this page. And according to this, it was made from 88 to 1990. So it would have been 1990 or 91 that I got this. It's at the bottom there. And it says at the top there that there were 38,000 of these sets made. And as I said, it is distinguishable because the later ones had a purple box lid with the correct power car on. And this one had a green lid. Now I'm just going to open this up to the loco section, and I'll show you what I mean about the incorrect colour if you're not familiar. These books really are fantastic. I really wish they'd published the 4th volume. But that's the power cars we've got with the beige carried over. And if I just fold this page over here, it should be white, as on these 4 examples. So I'll put those, when I get the page unstuck, put those together, and you can see the difference, the beige and the white. Now, the original power cars that I got when I was a 4-year-old, they're on my shelf. I haven't used them for many years, and I've actually got them down. And I'm going to do a comparison with these. These are mint condition. These have had hardly any use at all, or on the outside anyway. And it was actually quite a bit of forward thinking of my nan and granddad to buy me a HST as a train set, because there's nothing on this that a kid can break. There's no side rods, no buffers, no nothing that you could easily snap off. This is the ideal train set for a young child. Now, as I was saying, the original power cars, and here they are. This was repainted by me in my early teens, and the varnish is badly yellowed. But this is my original power car for my very first train set. I have the dummy car as well. The bogies have been fitted with Buckeye couplings. The coaches, unfortunately, are long gone. But when I repainted these, my lack of knowledge, you see I've painted the fronts beige as well, or Intercity Executive Light Grey to call it its correct term. But you can see the colour difference there. Now, one day I may do these power cars up, but I'm going to focus on the train set today. But one thing that did surprise me was when I looked in this, I saw that the gears were missing, and when I actually took the bogie out of the bogie frame, the motor is completely stripped. Now, I don't remember doing this. I didn't realise it was like this. But everything's been stripped off that Ringfield motor, so maybe these original power cars that I had, these are the original ones from my original train set. Maybe I'll do an episode of these in the future. But I'll put them back on the display shelf in the garage where they sit. And yeah, that is my very first train set. So now what I'm gonna do is set about looking at this train set. Now, I wanted one in original condition because it's so nostalgic for me. It really is, as I suppose everybody's first train set is. But as I said, these are virtually mint condition. There's no marks on the coaches, no marks on the wheels. Whoops, there wasn't any marks on the coach until I just bloody dropped it. But yeah, there's no marks on them at all. And they are in very, very good condition. The guy who I got this from did say that they hadn't been used much. I got a couple of train sets from him. They'll feature in future episodes because people do like the train set episodes and I enjoy doing them. But the power car itself, the wheels are very dirty on that. But the trailing car and the coaches, they're not too bad. I'm going to put the box lid on, and I do love the box artwork. Now, mentioning the box artwork, who can spot the mistake of Hornby's art department in the late 80s? Can you spot it? The bogey's on backwards, look. The bogey's on backwards. Now, I can only assume when the art department were drawing this off a model, somebody had assembled the model wrong, which has transferred to the actual box lid. Now, I've never noticed that before, ever. But as you can see, what I mentioned, this is the green box lid, which is the set that I had. So now I've got the power cars on the workbench. That's the dummy car, and there's the power car. I'm going to look at the dummy car just initially. Now, this should have working lights, so I'm just going to put it under the track there. And I'm going to apply some power, and hopefully the lights work in this end. And they do. The bulb is fine. That means I don't have to open this power car up. The lights are working fine. So all I'm going to do with the dummy car is I'm going to upend it into my loco cradle, and I'm going to thoroughly clean the wheels just as a matter of, just as a matter of principle, because there is a bit of dirt on them. And also, as is typical with models of this age, the plating on the wheels is also looking at becoming loose on a couple of the wheels on this model. So I just scrape away the excess and the damaged bits just so they don't transfer onto the track. So that was all the work the dummy car needed. Now this is the actual motor-driven power car. And this was so slow going forward. That controller is on full and it's just not having it. It works okay going reverse, but in forwards it's just so slow, and it must have either very congealed oil and grease, or it's had more use than I think it's had. So I'm going to crack this open and we're going to service the ring-filled motor and see if we can bring it back to life. So to open the power cars, there's 4 body clips, 2 on each side, that just need to be unclipped, and I'm just using a small flat-bladed screwdriver here. I'm working gently. And once the 4 clips have been disengaged, 2 on each side, as I said, there's one at the back underneath the corridor connection that just needs popping out in the same way, and then the chassis will separate from the body shell just like that. And I can tell immediately nobody's been in here before, and when I go to remove the wires from the motor block, there's a long hair there, that's lovely, but these are crimped on. These are some of the tightest wires I've ever taken off a ring-filled motor. So unclip the power bogie so it drops out from the bottom, and set the body shell and the chassis aside. And there we have the ring-filled motor, which we're going to service. And you've probably seen me do this before, but if you're a first-time viewer, I'm going to run through it quickly. Testing it with a battery directly to the motor terminals proves useless. So I just unclip it by inserting a screwdriver in that end, and that has unclipped the motor bogie. Gently prise the wheels apart, and this will allow you to remove the gear train on the back. Now I'm just going to undo the clips. Now that came off very easily. One of the motor faceplate clips had actually broken over time, so I'll put that back on, but I might replace it. There's the brushes and springs, and the commutator is absolutely filthy. Now that isn't dirt off the brushes, that's actually oil, I think. When I cleaned it, it seemed to be congealed oil. Now you remove that clip, will let you remove the drivetrain. So I've completely stripped the model now as far down as I'm going to go, And using a cotton bud and mess, initially I cleaned the commutator, but as you can see it is very badly tarnished. The mess just isn't cutting through it this time. So what I use instead, and I've done this a few times in the past, I'm going to actually use some Brasso. And this brings the commutator faceplate up like a new pin. This really does. This is good stuff. You can see on the end of the cotton bud, it's turning black. And that is all the contaminants being pulled off this brass. It really is good stuff. And I also clean the retaining bracket for the gear train with Brasso as well. And it comes up shining like a new pin. Once I've cleaned everything, I also give it another wash over with a cotton bud and mess just to remove any residue, because if you're not careful, Brasso can leave a residue on the surface if you don't get it all off. The brushes were then cleaned. As you can see, there's quite a bit of dirt on them. They was all cleaned. And then the motor faceplate was cleaned because there was some old grease on the front there where it was greased at the factory. It's in that bit there where the motor spindle spins round. But it's all gone hard and it's not very nice, so it all needs cleaning off to be replaced. I also clean the inside of the faceplate as well. I also give the wheels a clean. Now to clean the wheels I actually sprayed some WD-40 contact clean onto a cotton bud and cleaned the rear driving wheels because there was a lot of dirt on these wheels. The guy said it hadn't had much use, but it's obviously been round the track a few times because the wheels on the power car were very, very dirty. Considering how good the body shells are on this, the power car was inside was quite bad. I expected it to be near mint, to be honest. So I'm starting to rebuild the motor now, and I've put the faceplate back on, and then one brush and spring, and I'm doing the other one. So you put the brush in. Hornby brushes have a little nodule on the top which goes upwards because the spring sits over that. And then I just fold the retainers down. Now that retainer is a bit springy. So with the long nose pliers, I'm just going to bend the top of it so it holds it in place a bit better. And then when I put the power connector on it, you can hear it squealing. Making that awful screeching noise. That's very common with these motors. So what you have to do, and somebody actually emailed me about this the other day, small amount of oil on the bearing behind that worm gear there, and a small amount of oil or lubrication on the front plastic where the motor shaft goes through, just to make sure that it's correctly lubricated. But that screeching noise is caused by a dry bearing, and obviously I've cleaned all the old lubricant off this. But once I've added a drop of oil, as you'll hear now when I apply power, it's running rather nicely and that horrible screeching noise is gone. So that's good. At least that's one thing sorted. Next thing to do is to rebuild the gear train. Now I'm going to put a bit of Labelle 106 grease on the gear spindles. This is so that when they spin round they are nicely lubricated. Also put a bit on the worm gear, I suppose you'd call it. And then rebuild the drivetrain. The smaller gears go on the bottom, and the larger gears with the smaller one moulded into it go up the top, with the smaller gear facing inwards. And once all four gears are on, that retaining clip can be put back in place. And you can see just how nice and shiny that's come up with the Brasso. It's reflecting the light into the camera. Can be a little bit tricky to get those back in, but once it's in the top there, it just clips back into place. And the motor has been rebuilt and serviced so well that now it will actually turn with the battery, whereas before there was no life in it at all, if you remember. And that is spinning lovely. So one of the last things to do on the rebuild, put a tiny amount of oil in those brass bearings. Just rub it around there, just so it's lubricated when you put the wheels back in. And then the wheels are put back in, and then the traction tired wheel with the gear on it is pushed back into place. It is correctly gauged using some digital calipers, which I very rarely film because I often do it just before I run the model, but I do check the back-to-backs. Put the wheels on like that, and then another battery test to show you that everything's moving and everything is everything's in its correct place. And there we go, everything's turning as it should. Now I'm holding the bogie frame upside down now, and it's connected to a controller just so the wheels spin, and I'm going to use a fiberglass pencil to clean the wheels. The wheels on the actual motor bogie themselves were nowhere near as tarnished as the ones on the front pickup bogie, but they all cleaned up well in the end. After I polish the wheels with that, I use a cotton bud and meths just to remove any detritus and clean the wheels and polish them up to a shine. Considering the age, the traction tyres on this model were in good condition. They were very tight, no corrosion, no degradation of the rubber or anything, so I left them alone. And now I'm just reconnecting that wire, which is a pickup directly off the motor block. One day I might get round and I might fit decoder to this model, but I didn't do it in this video because I've got a Hornby. In fact, I've got two Hornby HSTs that are digitally fitted, and they run well, so there wouldn't have been any real benefit to putting digital in this model. And then it's clipped back into the bogie frame. It will only go in one way. The rear clip is wider than the front clip, so it is, make sure it's orientated correctly. Another small bit of lubrication on those small gears, and that is the motor bogies fully serviced. Now the two lead wires to the bulb, I'm just going to jack the front of the model up there and connect them to that battery, and that proves that the bulb on this model is working as well, so I've not got a source for replacement, so that is good news. And what I'm doing now is I'm just polishing up those front wheels and trying to remove all that tarnishing. Now that did take some time, but eventually it came off and they were shining like new. So I refit the motor. Now that brown lead goes onto the brush terminal, and this lead here with that directional diode for the lights clips directly to the motor chassis, motor block itself. The weight is replaced, wires tidied up, and then I refit the chassis to the body shell, and that is that, as they say. Very nice and easy. Although I did have to wash my hands, as I just shown you there, my fingers were extremely dirty. To refit the body shell, insert the light unit at the front first, and then just clip it back into place. Testing it on the track. Remember when we first tested it, it didn't like going forwards, but now it's absolutely fine in both directions. And just holding it in place with my fingers and turning the controller up, the front lights there are working just as they should. So I'm really pleased. As I said, I'm really pleased I've been able to find one of these sets again, and it is such a nice nostalgia trip for me. My nan and granddad bought me one of these when I was 4 or 5 years old, and it really did. It was my favourite train. I loved the HSTs anyway. I remember seeing them with my other grandfather when he worked on the railway, and it was just nice. It was my very first train that was my own, and it's so nice to have one of these sets again. So it's over to the dining room table now, my fully restored, fully rebuilt high-speed train set. And I'm going to open the box lid just as I did all those years ago, full of excitement. The old controller, as I said, I did test this, but its power output was pretty low. So I'm going to leave it in the box just to complete the set. But I won't be using it. If I ever run the HST again, I'll be using a more modern Hornby controller. So I'm going to set this up now on the dining room table. And I'm going to have a play with a HST, just as I did 35 years ago. 35 bloody years. Jesus, that's a lot. I didn't realise till I just said that. 35 years ago. I just wish my nan and granddad were around to watch this, because granddad did, he watched all my episodes, and he would have liked this, because they bought me, this is the set that they bought me. If you've got anything you'd like to see featured in a future episode of Trash to Track, please email me at dansmodelrailways@gmail.com. Have a look and get it sent over, and who knows, it may even feature in an episode all of its own. So stick around after the HST's had a bit of a run around the table, because there is a little bit at the end of this episode where I detail what some of my favourite rebuilds have been over the last 150 episodes. So 150 episodes. I can't quite believe we've done that many. But I just thought I'd pull out some favourites that I've done over the past 2 or 3 years, I think it is, of doing this. Initially I only started with a box of Great Western stuff. I thought I'd do 5 or 6 videos, but here we are, 150 videos in now. Obviously we've got the old Dean goods that featured in episode 1, a little bit dusty. Ironically, I was going to run this as the opening for this episode, but it's given up the ghost. It's not actually working. I think it might be the decoder, and then another thing is the thing's broke at the back, so it's lending itself to some repair again. But it was running. It was in the garden a few weeks ago, so it was running. Nigel and Paul have done a bunk and all out the cab, so I'll have to track them down. They're probably down the pub. But that was the very first one. In episode 1 was the mainline Dean goods. I also did this Redland 06, which was childhood toy. So I've put some pipes on the end of it. Digitally fitted, runs really well on digital. But yeah, that was a present from my nan and granddad as well, with a couple of wagons. I did this Klein Barn Austrian electric. Not actually ran this for a year or more. Not ran that for a long while. I have to give that a spin, but that was interesting because it's not got one of the brushes isn't conventional. It's made of brass, so you have to check that video out. You've got this Triang 37, which I did. This was episode 2. I think this is a bit dusty because this spends its life on a shelf because it's not digital. But that was literally pulled out the bin, the state that was in when I did that. So you want to check that out. I've got the Western. That's probably one of my favourite overhauls. If you remember, that was covered in glue. The body side was covered in glue and I resprayed that maroon. And did that one up, stripped it down completely, redid it all. Had a disaster with the varnish, and I've still not used Humbrol varnish ever since then. One of my all-time favourite rebuilds was Blue Diesel. This was my brother's, and this was a right mess. But now it's virtually factory fresh. Look at that. Blue Diesel. Still not sorted the armature on that. It runs okay, but it just needs, I think the armature's on its way out, so I need to find a new one. But if you go back through my video on the playlist and you'll find all these videos. And then probably one of my most favourite rebuilds was, let's move these out of the way, was the Hornby R693 crane. Now this was a proper stripped down and restored job, inspired by Marty's Matchbox Makeovers, who does a lot of diecast stuff. I watched him for years before I did my own channel, and I learned a lot from him. And it was all put to good use in this, because it's all diecast. So I used his method of getting rid of the, oh hello, there's a bloke in there, look, fireman, getting rid of the rivets, etc. Painted it all up, and I even managed to find some Newton Abbott transfers, but did it as Abbott's Newton, which is the layout name. But I really like that rebuild, and I use that all the time. If you've watched the Garden Railway videos, you'll know that's out and about quite a lot, especially when that bloody blackbird's about. It gets called in. Whoops. And another one of my favourites, now not necessarily favourite rebuild, but was this Lima warship, which is not a warship, it's a Deutsche Bahn 230 class. But this rebuild showed the YouTube model community how good it is. The guy, Peter I think his name was, who lived in France, I couldn't get bits for this, but he bought them for me, sent them over, and without him that loco would not be running. Digitally fitted and runs well. So they're just a few of my favourite. I've done so many. I've done other people's N-gauge stuff. That O-gauge 20 I did, that was in bits and rebuilt it. The Intercity A4 that I'll put a picture in the corner. The big boy that I did as well. Check that video out. There's a band, I can't remember their name offhand, but they let me use their song in that video. That was really good of them. And I've done so much. I've done N-gauge, O-gauge, loads of stuff for people, and I've got plenty more to come. There's a engine at the back here. I've got this old bathtub. I'll get stick for calling it that. That's next week's video. Is this Duchess of Devonshire. So it's not all complete yet. It's not fixed together. But that hopefully will be out next week. The week after's Loco is over there because it's in the paint shop. And I've got a few others. But yeah, 150 episodes. Thank you all so much for your support. Thanks for sending the stuff in. I do enjoy repairing them. And it gives me a little bit of pocket money to sort everything else out with as well. So yeah, thank you very much, all of you. Everybody that's watched it, everybody that sent stuff in. And thanks. When I've got enough, I had a look. I think I've got enough for another, without you guys sending stuff in, I've got enough for another 100 episodes at least. Because I keep buying stuff that's dodgy and storing it away. I've got a drawer. I've got a chest of drawers over in the corner with modelling stuff, and the bottom drawer is full of models that are in the overhaul queue. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and thank you all for helping me get to 150 episodes of Trash to Tracks. Amazing. Right, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.